Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Fudge, we've discussed the importance of addressing our nation's affordable housing crisis head on. And I know that you are committed to increasing the number of affordable units available to families. But those homes have to be built somewhere. And too many communities around the country, restrictive zoning laws that were born out of racial segregation prevent new affordable housing units from being built. Using exclusionary zoning to keep families, often lower income families and families of color, out of certain neighborhoods is wrong. And over time, the harm really adds up. Exclusionary practices drive up the cost of housing for everyone and reduce the amount of available land. So, Secretary Fudge, at your confirmation hearing, you told this committee that it is important that we get rid of the notion of not in my backyard. How does that not in my backyard approach impede efforts to address the affordable housing crisis?
Well, first off, thank you, Senator, for our ongoing conversations about this. The first thing that it does is it increases the cost of housing and it limits where we can build housing. If you have restrictive zoning ordinances, then there are two things that happen or can happen. One is that where there is available land, you cannot build, or the zoning is so onerous that it costs you more money to build. Maybe they put all kinds of restrictions on it that increase the cost of buying the property. The other thing it does is it just basically says to people in our communities, we do not want you to live in our neighborhood if you are low income, if you are a person of color. And so what we have found is that these laws have been around so very long that the jobs plan now gives us the opportunity to go into communities with some incentives to assist them in how we discuss it, how we can give them the kind of technical assistance to change it, how we engage communities so that we can have a better narrative about why we should allow new housing and housing that is not restrictive in communities that historically have prevented us from building.
Right. So let me follow up on that. How would incentives help? Aren't these changes that the federal government can just make on its own to get this housing built? Or why do you need these incentives?
Well, it really can't. A lot of the zoning laws are really just local, they're local ordinances, many of which we cannot change as a federal government. Now, we can talk about discrimination overall, we can talk about civil rights overall, but we cannot just go into a community and change all of their zoning or planning ordinances. And that is why we want to engage communities with conversation, with technical assistance, to talk to them about how they can change them, how they can, maybe we can come to some agreement that makes them not as restrictive and not as costly.
Well, I completely agree with the direction you're going here. My American Housing and Economic Mobility Act includes a new $10 billion housing innovation grant program that would provide funding so that local governments can use it to build things like parks or schools if they are actively removing unnecessary barriers to building affordable units in their communities. Eligible reforms would include things like changing bans on multifamily construction, revising minimum lot size requirements, or passing inclusionary zoning ordinances.